peace, and we need to rewrite the narrative. Having said all that, so going back to the this nomenclature, it's interesting how the Chinese actually didn't say trade war. They say trade friction. They try to underplay it because they are the one rising. But I think I'd like to propose another nomenclature, which is the cold peace. Actually, I don't coin that. Actually, I got it from probably Padeni's friend, Giorgio, a very famous Singaporean. So I think we need to get used to this cold peace our entire lifetime. It's not gonna last 10 years or even 1-2 years. It's gonna go beyond. If you look at tech war, look at what happened to Huawei, right? The owner is arrested in Canada and United States is gonna extradite her. And then there's 23 charges against Huawei on Monday, from corporate espionage to wire fraud and so forth. And the 5G parts, they're not allowed to supply to Australia, New Zealand, America, and so forth. I don't know what's the details behind it, but at the end of the day, it's technology war, it's cyber war, people say it's capital war. China has $1 trillion of US Treasury bond. I have to ask Makhantik what can they do with that as a weapon of financial mass destruction, but I don't think it's going to go there. So get used to that. So that's my first point. Get used to this cold peace. Point number 2, I completely agree with Makhantik. I think the risk to Indonesia is not so much the trade tariff itself, but more on the macroeconomics. And I would say 3 C's, so easier to remember: capital, commodity, and China. What happened last year was a flight of safety because investors perceive that emerging markets has more risk and US Treasury is safer, especially when the Fed's actually hiked interest rate 4 times. So there's a flight of safety from emerging markets to United States, especially when our current deficit was above 3%. Commodity, Makhantik mentioned before, our tax income still relies so much on commodity, and commodity is so volatile depending on China. So the 3 C's. So these things are actually could be more detrimental to companies and corporates and sectors in Indonesia, especially when they have US dollar borrowing, because it's reminiscent of 1997. So that's the risk. Now going to the opportunity. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Bu Lili because she and Pak Enggar has successfully negotiated also with Robert Lighthizer from US Trade Representative that we are not yet out of the GSP program, the Generalized System of Preference. It is a program for 129 poor and developing countries where we get preferential treatment on tariff. But we are one of the 16 suspicious countries. And we are the 4th country that's benefited the most after India, Brazil, and Thailand. We have 17 billion of export and 10 billion of surplus. Correct me if I'm wrong. But so we need to be careful. But again, we have a lot of leverages. We eat a lot of tempeh and tofu, right? So United States, major export for agriculture is actually soybean, kedelai. So we can negotiate on that. Lion Air and Garuda is one of the largest importers of Boeing. We can negotiate on that. But if I'm not mistaken, there are 3 things that the United States are looking for to keep us within the GSP program. They want us to open 3 things for our market. One is the electronic gateway payment, and number 2 is the cloud servers, and number 3 is the insurance. Right now it's limited to maybe 20%. So the United States, if I'm not mistaken, is trying to have our country to be open for those things. And on the opportunity, now I see the world in a different physiological law. Before we have one center of gravity, now I can see that the world is actually have 2 gravity poles. One in the United States, one in China. And there's almost going to be like a wall in between them. But the trade that's going on intra-region, I think is going to be actually more intensive within both regions. If you look at the United States, they've ratified free trade agreement with Mexico and Canada in November. And they're trying to squeeze Venezuela as well, I think, with imposing more power there. The same thing with China with their Belt and Road Initiative program. We spoke about ASEAN leadership. I think there's going to be a much more intensive collaboration in intra-region. And as far as replacement of export from China to the United States and vice versa, definitely Indonesia can be one of the winners. But I already talked to a friend of mine today, actually. He's one of the largest steel industry. And he said, yes, China wants to relocate their manufacturing facility to Indonesia. Same thing with textile. But the question is, who's going to get it? Is it going to be Vietnam? Is it going to be Thailand? Or is it going to be Indonesia? And the three top sectors that the US slapped a huge tariff are automotive or automotive parts, clothing and apparel, as well as electronic parts. Now, Vietnam, as Pak Khatib has mentioned, is so well entrenched on those cluster industries. Our logistic expenses is the most expensive in the ASEAN region, which the government has done great by focusing on infrastructure. So I completely agree. We have to pursue free trade. In fact, my friend from Vietnam, they pursue free trade in an extreme. You know, business association like Karin and Apindo in Vietnam, they continue to split smaller and smaller because the members want to pursue their own free trade agreement with other parts of the world. So they go the other extreme. That's on free trade. Labor law, and I'm pretty sure that whoever gets elected, they will make sure that our labor law is more not only competitive but flexible. And finally, on that cluster industry is so important. That's why project like Chandra Asri, where it substitute import for basic industries, it should be truly supported in this country. And the government has really done a great job on that. So we need to improve the clustering of industry in Indonesia, reduce imports, reduce logistic expenses by infrastructure, create tax incentive. So those are all the positive things. And just final conclusion is that Indonesia needs new engine of growth. You mentioned about export and investment. I completely agree. We also should not forget about other sectors in the industry where, like tourism. We also still get US dollar. Export of professional laborers, get US dollar driven. And also focus on manufacturing because that's labor intensive. Thank you so much.